All right, hello, welcome everyone to another PGS live dialogue. And I just want to say thank you guys so much for watching this video, and I just appreciate all you guys being a part of the channel. Again, I'm trying to do this once a week. I'm trying to connect with my friends and colleagues and also mentors of mine. And this is not only a time for us to really network together, because this is really a time where I feel like we got to rally together. But this is actually really fun for me because I get to also learn from my friends, colleagues, and mentors. And I just want to let you guys know, whether you're watching on Facebook or on my YouTube channel. For those of you guys don't know, you guys see it on the thumbnail here, youtube.com/PJS Center. That's my YouTube channel. Go ahead and check out the channel. Would love for you guys to subscribe and join me there. But today I'm really excited because we have a very special guest today. I'm going to let him kind of do a longer intro of himself later. But my friend DJ Chuang, so let me switch screens here. DJ is here. I met DJ years ago while I was actually church planting. And it was, as I got to know him, I actually got to know his son as well, Jeremiah, whom I had just the honor of just being a part of his life and being any sort of pastoral guidance for him in his college years. And he graduated now. But DJ Chuang, if you guys don't know who DJ Chuang is, this guy is probably the most networked Asian American guy I know. He is so well networked and trusted man, and he does a lot of good partnerships with a lot of different pastors and leaders and churches and ministries and networks all across the United States. And DJ is also kind of like an avid conference junkie. He actually goes to conferences so much. I get jealous of him because he travels a lot, gets to go to conferences. But here's the funny thing, you guys, and this is something part of DJ's gift. DJ doesn't go to the conference for the conference session. He actually goes for something much more valuable, which is to network. He goes to network. So while everyone's in the main sessions, DJ would rather, and this is actually a really great thing, he wants to go talk with people, build relationships, and build his network. And this is probably why he has one of the best networks that I know. And so, DJ, just for the people who don't know who you are, and just for a chance for you to introduce yourself a little bit more, why don't you just let people know kind of what you do, your job, and your ministry background, maybe a little bit about your family. Go ahead.
Sure. I live in Orange County, California, and I like to wear orange. Been out here, let's see, 13 years now. But I grew up in Virginia, graduated from Virginia Tech, also graduated from Dallas Theological Seminary, and tried to be a pastor for 10 years, 5 years of seminary, 5 years pastoring, and realized, yeah, I could be an okay pastor, but I think God had more for me. And so the past 20 years, I've been connecting with churches and pastors and resourcing them as a consultant and as a blogger, as a podcaster, and also an author. So I authored a book titled Multiasian.church, which is about multi-ethnic churches that are led by Asian Americans. And that's become a central piece to my present future in terms of what I sense is my calling. It's taken me 52 years to discover it, and I consider it a gift. I don't know that everybody has that kind of clarity, but I got to get a sense of that. So just grateful to be alive. During the day, I work as an internet engineer with .bible domain names. Been doing that for 7 years, but my personal interests are very much in kingdom kind of initiatives that don't pay the bills, and I'm not financially independent, so that's okay. God's provided in other ways. So that's a quick overview. There's a lot of texture and complexion to my story. So it's a frequently asked question. What is it that you do exactly, DJ?
Yeah, we're going to talk a little bit about your book a little bit later, Multiasian.church, and all the stuff that we talk about, you guys, I'm going to put in the links in my YouTube channel. So when I say links, I'm not referring to Facebook, but in the description on the YouTube channel, I put links to a lot of DJ's blogs and his book as well. And, DJ, during this COVID-19 crisis, just kind of how are you doing? How's your family doing? Your wife Rochelle and Jeremiah, and how are you guys kind of all adjusting to the past kind of 6 weeks now?
Well, we've all adjusted pretty well. We're working from home and we have jobs where we can do that. I've actually been working from home for 7 years, so that part of it's not new. The part of being stuck at home is new to me, and so I've had to adjust, and more recently I've had to slow down. So actually before this conversation, I took a nap. Jesus took naps, and and we've all kind of set up our workstations and have done well. We've done more cooking at home, so that's been a good thing to do. So because we're doing well, we've actually taken time and energy to serve and volunteer with our church and get to know our neighbors. So those have been good things. And we have been I've been hosting 2 online small groups, and just realized that not everybody's in the place we're at, and we're able to walk alongside and encourage them. So just grateful that we can do that.
And by the way, guys, DJ's whole family is kind of a multi-talented family. Rochelle is like this master graphic designer, and you guys in your garage have this like old school kind of printing press, right? Is that correct?
Yes, we have 2 letterpresses in the garage, and it's decorated with a lot of letterpress prints. So for those that don't know what a letterpress is, it's like, that hand cranked printing press. You can actually put letters in there and print cards and paper posters and things like that.
When I
And then my son, he works at Saddleback.church, where he's on staff with you.
Yeah.
Overall. So he's a data reporting analyst. Been working at Saddleback for 6 months, and then I've been married 25 years now.
Math genius also, Jeremiah, math genius. Yeah, I remember when I first saw that printing press in the garage, I was thinking to myself, man, if we ever get into a revolution where we have to start printing like underground stuff, it's all going to come out of your garage, like old school printing press. And so that's what I imagined when I saw that. Um, DJ, share some of your thoughts here. And again, this is where I get excited because I get to learn for just from you and your wisdom. Unfortunately, because of the whole crisis and the virus, we have this rise of racism against Asians, people blaming Asians. It doesn't even matter if you're Chinese or not, they just assume that you're Chinese. A lot of verbal racism and just unfortunately physical acts of violence, which are so just sad to see and read about. And just want to know what your thoughts were on that, people doing that because they're blaming Asians for the virus. And I think another thing that I would just kind of want to learn from you is how can we as Christians, especially Asian Christians, how can we respond to this, especially when naturally that makes us so angry and we see the anger from other Christian Asians posted on social media. It's probably adding more fuel to the fire, but it's such a natural response because it makes us so angry. So how can we respond to some of these things that we're seeing?
Well, there's been a couple of responses that have been more helpful. One is a group of younger next-gen leaders have pulled together an Asian American Christian Collaborative, and that's actually the web address, asianamericanchristiancollaborative.com. And they've gathered over 10,000 signatures from both Asians and
I
non-Asians,
signed it.
mostly Christians. Not all of them, maybe not all Christians, but it's a Christian initiative, and calling for justice from a Christian standpoint, that we as the church need to stand together and to call for justice because God is a God of justice. And we want to call for whole life discipleship and those under authority to be accountable and to say that this is wrong and to make a clear statement. And so that has rallied many amongst a wide spectrum of evangelical Christians, some progressive, some more conservative. And so that's one thing that's been really prominent because it takes such a bunch of education and awareness, because Many Asian Americans are not aware. There's not a place where we have a shared sense of media or communication. So we're disconnected in that sense. And secondly, Asian Americans are very diverse, over 34 ethnicities and even more languages. And so we don't have the easier thing that holds us together, like the Black Entertainment Network and some of the other things. There's glue, elements of glue that hold together African American communities that we don't have as Asian Americans. And so to begin cultivating that helps us to understand our Asian American identity and how we can care for the collective of all Asian Americans, which doesn't naturally come because, for example, most people would identify with their own ethnicity, their own heritage. I'm Chinese American, you're Korean American. We don't readily identify as Asian Americans, but because we're in this context of America, we're all marginalized in very similar ways. That's one of the first steps. And then for us as Christians, it's easy to over spiritualize because that's how we're educated and that's how we're acclimated and assimilated. So even among Asian American Christian leaders, you kind of have a split verdict that many are not contextually sensitive to this. Racism is a systemic issue and not only an individual issue. So not every Asian American is going to react with anger in the same way, even when they're offended. They might say, oh, it's just that person that's having the problem, which is true, but there's a whole system that is invisible and harder to get your hands around that cultivates, that incubates the biases against Asian Americans, starting from the very top of our president. So that's a quick flyover, but if you want to dig into a little bit more, we can certainly do that.
Well, I was saying that we both signed it. You're actually, I think you're part of kind of like the board with the Asian American Christian Collaborative. But that's another link I'm going to put down below. And again, something that DJ said I want to repeat is this is not just for Asians. So when we say Asian American Christian Collaborative, read the statement of faith, you guys. It's on the site, on the link below. We're talking about if you agree with our statement of faith, we're not talking about a statement of faith like salvation by grace through faith. We're simply talking about racism is an act of hatred. Do you agree that racism against Asians need to stop? These are things that we're talking when we say statement of faith. And so this is not just for Asians. Non-Asians should be signing this. Just like if there was some sort of black Christian collaborative that said racism against black people, African Americans, Latino Americans, whoever you are, needs to stop, I would sign that. So I hope you guys could read that and sign that, and it's a really great thing. There's also a Facebook group page, of course, Asian American Christian Collaborative. Please join that. Again, this is about spreading awareness and how we need to overcome this racism. DJ, we talked about this a couple of months ago, and we talked about your book, Multiasian.church. And by the way, you guys, this is not a sponsored video. DJ pays me $0 for me to say this. This is something I truly mean, but Multiasian.church, one of the best books out there right now, because DJ did a phenomenal job with just his research. There's so much research in there that truly explains the kind of growth and birth of Asian churches immigrating to Asian American churches from first generation, second generation, third generation. And DJ does a good job. We're not just talking about Chinese or Korean. He talks about Korean, Japanese, Chinese, talks about Hmong there a little bit. He does a very good job. And so, again, this is kind of something where, like, even if you're not Asian, but you wanted to learn a little bit more about how Asian churches started and what that kind of looked like and the progression of it. Great book. I mean this. It's one of the best out there because there really is no other book like this out there. And if there is, it's not as updated with DJ's research. Again, not a sponsored video. I get no money for saying this. Buy this book, you guys, and read up on this, especially if you are in an Asian American church, Asian church. You need to read this book. But going back to your book, DJ, in chapter 11, you start getting into this idea. It's kind of your solution on how we could come together. And I remember you challenged me with this a couple of months ago, and you wanted to talk about when I got to that chapter. And so I wanted to ask you, DJ, what is your solutions, or what is a solution for Asians to network together instead of, and you do talk about this in your book, continuing to do kind of what we have always been doing and what is still happening now, which is regional, kind of separated Asian gatherings around the country. And there's separation because of theological reasons, or maybe it's because of purpose and things like that. But I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, the chapter really talks about we need to stop doing that and get more into a gathering together rather everyone doing their own thing. So how can we do that right now?
Yeah, well, I think we're experiencing how to do that right now because of Zoom calls. And everybody is confined by geography because of physical distancing, and yet more is getting, or different things are being accomplished because we are geographically separate, but we can connect in real time through video calls. And so it's working differently, but it's also working strategically. And back to the book, I don't get a penny for anybody that buys the book either. So not only is there no sponsorship to this video series, but there's nothing that comes to me. I just want to take money off the table because for whatever reason, money just makes people uncomfortable. It makes me uncomfortable. So I just want to take that out of the equation. And then also for your viewers and listeners, I want to offer a free digital version of the book. When you go to Multiasian.church, enter the code PJS Center, and you'll get a free download on your Kindle or
Awesome.
iBook reader, because the goal is to share that message to help next generation church leaders.
Y'all need to download that. But seriously, if you are in Asian American ministry or church, I'm being serious. You must read this. The research that DJ does for it's kind of like a commentary, right, guys? We rely on the research of scholars. DJ's research here is so phenomenal, and the stuff that he has answered for us is great. You guys need to download this book for free. Oh my gosh, DJ, you're so generous. You need to download this book, guys. You need to read it. Okay, DJ, go ahead.
In chapter 11, that's pretty much my playbook of, I've been in this space accidentally of Asian American Christian church leadership development for around 20 years now. And I'm not a natural leader, so I've had to learn a lot the hard way. And I don't lead an organization, but I know what happens in organizations. So I very much take a broader perspective about what is it going to take to lift all of us in our leadership and impact rather than just individuals. And so the three things I mentioned in chapter 11, and it's unpacked there. One is we have to use our voices. So there's over 10,000 Asian and Asian American churches in America right now. And the internet is how we see the reality of the world right now. Everybody uses Google. Even my mom, who just turned 80, is learning to use Zoom, and she surfs YouTube. And so it's multi-generational. It's how we see the world now. It's not just driving down the street and looking at a billboard. And yet we see very few Asian American Christian voices on YouTube and on the internet. So what kind of a witness are we really sharing and shining as Christ followers? We need to use our voices, tell our stories, do our blogging, do our podcasts, and so on and so on. So use our voices, because what happens then, it's the fringe voices that are kind of the angry Asians that are taking the mic instead of the good people using the mics. So we need to use our voices because voices influence. And in fact, it goes back to Genesis 1 that God created the world by speaking the word in a very primal way. When we use our words constructively, it creates new worlds. Words
But
create worlds.
it's also older voices that are always getting the mic too. We need to raise the voices of younger people, 20s voices,
Mm-hmm.
30s voices.
Mm-hmm.
That's why we started 30
Yeah.
Network. And so
Yes.
we need to hear their voice and encourage them to do that, because in our
Yes.
culture, we
Yes.
suppress the younger because they're always not smart enough or not good enough. We got to
Yeah.
stop that. We got to raise their
Well,
voices too.
great point. Great point. And you know what? It's a new world that we don't need to wait for platform, and we don't need to wait for permission. We don't need to wait for publishers. We have blogging, we have Instagram, we have YouTube, we have Facebook, and you learn to communicate more effectively by practicing and communicating more. And so that's why I really commend what you're doing, John, learning to communicate more effectively, to hone in on the message you want to share with the world, in helping develop your own leadership, but benefiting others at the same time. So using our voices, one easy step, but whatever reasons that we hesitate to do that, take an hour a week. It doesn't have to take a lot of time. So that's one. Number two, which is what you alluded to, is we need a national gathering of key leaders amongst Asian American Christians and church leaders. Because in the absence of that, we stay slowed and isolated, and there's no sense of understanding or cohesion of what are we all about in this story of God in this generation. Now, that's not to say the regional things that you've mentioned and all of us see happening. I'm not saying that should not happen. I'm not looking to replace that, but I am saying here's what's missing, and that's what's holding us back. That there is not a national annual gathering, not a big conference, just for 30 people, maybe 50 people, that are key leaders and key influencers that can respect what God is doing in each of their respective areas of influence, and to build kingdom kind of relationships, not necessarily all theological agreement or working on a project together, but just to be in the same room or to be on the same Zoom call will open all kinds of kingdom possibilities that is still not yet happening. It's an encouraging time. We're seeing at least 5 or 6 Asian Americans who are leading Christian organizations now, like Gospel Coalition and Lausanne Movement and Bread for the Hungry, and who am I missing? InterVarsity, and there's 1 or 2 more. So, Asian Americans are becoming prominent leaders in Christian organizations, but I don't think they're meeting. But if they would meet along with some pastors, I think our future will be brighter than it's ever been.
I think, and I've asked you this before, but I want to ask you this again so that everyone can hear your answer. Because I think one of the reasons why Asians have a hard time doing a mass gathering like that is because, and I'm like this too. It gets a little bit. I've learned to be more gentle with it, especially being a Saddleback, which is why I love the church, because they do a good job with this. But they have such theological boundaries. They get scared that if I get connected to a DJ, but we don't really agree on some of the theological things, that people might think that I have been theologically compromised. I feel like there's a lot of Asian American leaders and pastors who only want to work with their denominational group, or only want to work with those who went to the same seminary as I did. They're really scared. They don't really want to blur the lines of their theological distinctions, which is not what I think you or I would ever say you should do. Just like what you said, you're not looking to replace the small gatherings. You're just looking for this national gathering. So, what would be your answer to that for those people who feel a little bit uncomfortable doing a national gathering with someone who might not be Reformed or a Southern Baptist or from the Pentecostal movement, something like that?
Yeah, well, the national gathering is not a public big gathering. So it's not in the public eye where people are going to get exposed for being in the same room with somebody who doesn't agree with them theologically. So just the scary misperception of that happening is off the table. It's an off the grid meeting, but it's a relational greeting. I mean, yeah, a relational gathering, but very strategic. And so I've changed the paradigm. I've changed the game. So those concerns are myths and vain imagination.
Let,
We're building relationships for greater good.
let's say we got Julius Kim, president of Gospel Coalition, Eugene Cho, even an Alexander Jun from APU. We get these guys, Stephen even a Kevin Wynn. We get all these guys in the same room. What would be one win or one strategic kind of win that you would be aiming for in this gathering?
So it would take at least 3 gatherings for something to happen. So the first gathering is people getting a feel for who's in the room and if they're comfortable. The second gathering is, okay, here are three or 4 people in the room that I actually want to do something with. Not everybody. The goal is not for everybody to sign a statement or to do something big together. The goal is to create the space where you have cross-pollination so that more happens than any of us can do alone. And then by the third meeting, that's when the fireworks begin to take off and the plans begin to gel. And then it might take meeting 4 and 5 to just solidify some of those things. But that's from my life experience, that's what it takes. Just one meeting will not change anything, but you need probably 3 to 5 to solidify the relationship for something bigger to happen. And it doesn't have to be everybody, but we kind of need that plurality in that first meeting to get a sense of, okay, who's got some wiggle room theologically, who's got some connections and resources, what are the opportunities, and then where do we need to partner up to do something more than we can do alone.
I love that.
That's the big idea.
Yeah.
That's what's strategic. And that's this is connected to my third point in chapter 11, which is generosity and philanthropy. Pastors are not known for making big salaries, with a few exceptions of the celebrities. And I don't think we have celebrity Asian American pastors yet. Do we?
I mean, obviously Francis Chan comes to mind, right?
No, but the ones that make the headlines for having a $16 million mansion.
Oh no, nothing like that.
Yeah.
No.
Okay, so we don't have the prosperity guys yet.
No. We don't want the prosperity
we'll,
gospel.
Well, yeah, but people, God has blessed people with wealth to become generous as part of building out God's kingdom. And so this kind of event would take financial resources for people who believe in this kind of a vision for bigger kingdom impact beyond just building church buildings and sending more missionaries, which is where most Asian American Christian giving tends to go to. Right. Nothing wrong with that, but there's so much more that could be done, and there's so much more wealth that's not yet activated.
Yeah, I think leadership development is a key thing that needs to be more activated instead of this old way, which is kind of like you're not ready for leadership until you're 40. I think that really does need to die, with the exception of I understand experience is needed, and there is a time period where you're kind of groomed, so that's all good. But yeah, that kind of assumption that as you get older, you're automatically a good leader. We're actually, you and I are actually observing that right now. It's not true. We're seeing people that we know not ending well. And I think it's because leadership development it's not absent, but it does need some more attention. It needs more attention. You talked about generosity, and it's part of like your new mantra. You have like this mantra of 3 things that you're kind of living for. What were those 3 things again?
They're represented by 3 letters, MSG. Pretty easy for Asians to remember. M stands for multi-Asian, S for shame, and G for generosity. So Multi-Asian is the book I wrote. S is for Shame, which is a podcast I launched 2 years ago called Erasing Shame. And because we as Asians and Asian Americans grow up in a shame-based culture, so much of that keeps us in the dark. And yet, when we come to Christ, we are to be children of the light. And I want to bring to light the pains and the brokenness, and in particular, issues related to mental health, mental and emotional well-being. I want to bring that to the surface so that people can experience fullness of life, the abundant life, and healing in Christ and all around. And then G, generosity, because there's so much wealth that's just not activated, and it's still uncomfortable for most of us as Asian American Christians to talk about money strategically. And I've worked 10 years in the philanthropy world as a executive director of a private family foundation. So I want to share some of the experiences I've had so that people understand what a donor advised fund was. I had no clue, but it's such a cool vehicle for me being able to be generous and for our family to experience the joy of generosity. Never thought I would be able to experience or say that, but I'm on that side of the equation now. So it's amazing. It is truly what Jesus said. It's more blessed to give than to receive.
Yeah, and I want to talk about generosity here because right now, with our current crisis, generosity is such a needed spiritual discipline right now. At our church, we have our food bank going on, and we are feeding hundreds every day, hundreds. I see a text from our campus. We just served like 287 families. It's like insane, and it's not just at our campus. Anaheim, LA, a lot of campuses are doing, not all of them. And generosity is something that we need to see more of right now. But as generosity is part of one of your three in your mantra, right now business is also declining, and people are struggling. So how do you suggest people right now to be generous? Because again, a natural response is like, but man, it's like hard because I also need to take care of my family. I'm kind of scared. So what would you say to those people who are thinking like that?
Yeah, generosity is very much about perspective. And if we have a roof over our head and we're alive and we have some extra resources that go beyond what we really, really need, then we can be generous. And this came alive to me in a video portion of a event gathering experience called Generous Giving. So the Journey of Generosity is what they call their weekend event. And they showed a couple different stories of people who live in poverty, okay, below the poverty line, and yet they were able to be generous. And so people living below the poverty line were able to be generous by just taking a little bit of rice and putting that away because they could eat a smaller portion. And that rice got collected and converted into cash or to feed a pastor. Then the pastor could live. And so they were able to experience generosity and support others and to experience that joy, even though they were also in need. And the math tells us that even if you have $1 in your savings account here in America, you're already in the top 10 or 15% of wealth in the world. So if you're in America, you're already in that top echelon of wealthy when it comes to being in the global world. And so, allow that to sink in and be around a people that values generosity, because we tend to be bombarded with consumerism. So we don't know what generosity looks like, but as you're in a community of generosity, then it begins to soften your heart and give some good teaching and give some good stories. And then you begin to see, okay, here's what it could look like for us in our lifestyle, because it's very much a work of the heart. And until that heart transformation happens, the tactics in terms of the how-to doesn't really make sense. But once your heart is softened, and I'm a trained facilitator. My son Jeremiah, whom you discipled, is also a trained facilitator in Journey of Generosity. And what is so amazing about that program, in 24 hours, people experience heart transformation and begin to take the next step of generosity. I mean, I have not seen that kind of a potent experience in Bible classes or teaching or seminars or anything else. So a 24-hour experience, I'd be happy to host and facilitate a small group of 10 to 15 people through a journey of generosity. And actually, there's an online version now because of this COVID-19 crisis, that if you can gather 12 people, let's go through the journey of generosity, and you too can understand how to be generous in a time like this.
There's two things that you said right there that I feel really stuck out to me and are so key. As you were sharing that illustration of the people just taking a scoop of rice and setting it aside, it, it's there's the sacrifice that is kind of
Mm-hmm.
needed, but
Mm-hmm.
but the sacrifice is not that big. I think when people think sacrifice, they think, oh, I have to give like 90% of my paycheck. If you can, that's great. If you can't, that's not what we're saying. Just that's one scoop of rice, and if
Mm-hmm.
everyone did it, just
Mm-hmm.
imagine what you can do. And I love that, how like there's a pastor there that never has to worry about food. I think that's great,
Mm-hmm.
just by because people are generous. So there's a sacrifice that's needed, but there's another thing that you said that I feel like is so key, which is if you're not hanging out with generous people, then you're never going to be generous, or it's going to be harder to be generous.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're around people who just want to keep everything to themselves, it's you don't feel very compelled to also be generous. But when you're around people, and that's why I love our church, because Pastor Rick says this all the time, like we are the most generous church. He talks about how we just give so much. It's easier to be generous because you're in that sphere, you're in that atmosphere. And so I think those are just great key things that you shared right there. um, DJ, if there was an opportunity for you to somehow access communication to millions of people, let's just say in America, maybe like every news network somehow visited your house and they're just kind of saying, hey, DJ, we just want you to share so one message. What would be one message of hope or encouragement, or, what would be like a sermon that you would preach right now if you could just communicate something to like millions of people in America? What would you say?
Man, what an opportunity, right? And technically, we have that opportunity already. That's what YouTube has opened up for us, that we can say a message that speaks to million. If it speaks to a couple dozen of the right people, and then they share it with a couple dozen others, that's what quote unquote going viral is. And the things that tend to go viral are those things that are uh, highly emotional. So it's got to be provocative, whether it's funny or provocative, um, but it's got to engage people at such an emotional level that it provokes them, and it provokes them to share, and then the news gets wind of that, and then it gets to millions. So it's upon us on how a message can reach millions, and it's available right here at your fingertips. In terms of the message I would like to share with the world, I don't think it's going to resonate at the heart level. That I haven't crafted it to that level yet. But the message that's been transferred for me. So the thing is, it has to be transferred for me first before we can transform others. Is that you have no one to impress and nothing to prove. God loves you just the way you are, and He's not mad at you. He's mad about you, and He's for you. He's not against you. If that can sink in for everybody hearing this message, that will liberate you, that will heal you, that will give you overflowing gratitude and a whole new outlook on life.
That's
It's done that for me.
Man, that's one of the best. I ask this question to everyone I interview. That's one of the best things I've heard, especially in this social media generation. You have no one to impress. Oh man, DJ, so wise right there. The amount of likes and followers, is you have no one to impress. Your identity is in Christ as a child of God. Beautiful. I love that, DJ. Man, DJ, I'm so thankful for just my relationship with you and our partnership in ministry. And thank you so much for your time. So many golden nuggets that I got from you today. And I'm thankful for you to share that with others too. And again, I just want to remind everyone DJ Chuang here, he is offering you guys a free digital download of his book, Multiasian.church. I'm going to put it in the link below. And he said if you use the phrase or the key promotional code PJS Center, which is the name of my YouTube channel, you get it
Okay.
for free. And again,
Yep.
I cannot reiterate this enough. If you are anyone who works with Asian churches or ministries, this is a must download. And I cannot emphasize this enough. The stuff that DJ shares in this book is going to be so helpful for you to understand your own culture. And I think it's going to be valuable. And so please, you guys, click on that link, get this book, download it. It's for free, you guys. Read it. And also, check out the Asian American Christian Collaborative. The link is down below. Sign this statement, you guys. We need to rise above this racism against Asians, and we need to end it. We need to just spread this awareness. And I hope you guys could read that and sign that. And I just hope all you guys are safe and healthy. And again, check out my channel. I'm going to try to do this once a week with different people. And leave a comment down below. Maybe there's certain things that you guys want to learn about or hear about. And I would love to ask some of those questions in future interviews. Thanks, guys, for watching. And I just hope you guys are all safe. Bye-bye.